Welcome to the channel Tribe. In this session of TTTribeCast webinar, we are having Soumya Mukherjee discussing on Containerize your test and parallelize executions. Huge shout out to BrowserStack, our exclusive sponsor for all community events and premier sponsor for conferences. We thank them for supporting this event.
Welcome, Soumya. Yeah, welcome to the stage.
Hello everyone, good morning.
Yeah, the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the session. Let me quickly share my screen and we'll go through a bit of literature. And you guys can start posting your question and then we can take all of those questions in the last. Now, this predominantly is little advanced topic. And there are reasons why do we want to do this. First of all, thanks Test Drive for the opportunity. I think you guys are doing amazing by bringing a lot of folks who want to learn about testing and automation. Yeah. So let me start the presentation. Okay. So today we are going to see how we can containerize our tests and execute it in parallel. Okay. Now everybody, we will see here concepts of Jenkins, that's continuous integration. We'll see how you can leverage Docker. I'll talk about what is Docker, why it is important, and then we'll see a demo, right? A couple of demos here. So this is a very, very packed session. I wish I would have got 3-4 hours, but it is a packed session. So stay tuned and like a pilot, I always say, sit back and relax. Okay. Something about me, close to 17 years of experience, started my career as a developer, made a choice to move to testing, predominantly on the automation side. And I did, I was a co-founder of a couple of consulting companies in my career. Right now I'm in Apple, working as an engineering manager, managing variety of projects, architecting the test automation and the managing the engineering teams. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. These are my handles. These are short handles via Bitly. So thanks to them. So today's agenda, we will see what is Jenkins. So I would be probably going back and forth in the question section so that I need to understand, whether how do you guys understand Jenkins and Docker, and we will see some bit of Selenium test. So we'll run a Selenium test. And predominantly, we would use something very different what people do not do, and we'll see how to, how to implement the Docker. Quick understanding about Jenkins. Can anybody tell me what do they mean by Jenkins? Why Jenkins came into the picture? Anyone? Okay, running jobs automatically. Yes, they do. To do continuous delivery. Yes, so CI and CD. Yes, it orchestrates things. Yes. What you are telling me is what are its capability, but can anybody tell me why there is a need of continuous integration? Okay, Jenkins is just a tool to aid that, but we need to first understand what is continuous integration and why predominantly the yes. So quicker feedback, right? And okay, so I can take that one quicker feedback and then let me give up an example. Okay, let's assume I have a dev team in the India and I have a QA team in US, right? We basically develop the product here, okay, and ship it, or basically check in our code in Jenkins, make the build and then deploy, right, on the server. Now, what typically happens here is that when my QA team comes, like in their morning, they will pick up that build, they'll start testing it, and they will find some defects, or they want to publish some observation. What they have to do is they will put that in the system, and then my developers will again come to their morning. So if you look at this, right, the cycle is of more than 10, 12 hours, right? There are teams who are distributed. There are feedbacks which are highly elongated, like they are very, very long. Uh, Mostly 10 hours, 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours, right? Depending upon where your team sits. Um, and that is why, there was a need of a tool that sh- should come to the market and, help to solve this problem. And that is where the tool called as Hudson. So Jenkins was called as Hudson before, and it basically brought in an idea that, okay, you can do all of that you are doing manually, which is you're building your code, doing configuration management. Okay, and what I can do is I can basically help you to do that, and you can deploy. And if you have automated tests, that would basically tell you that, whether the build is stable enough to at least test, and whether the tester would basically take it for their testing. So that was predominantly why Jenkins came into the picture of software development, to shorten the cycle. So if you look at it, everywhere there is a need of reducing the cycle time. So Jenkins here offers continuous testing, okay, with Selenium. It also helps in configuration management with Puppet. So what Jenkins do, Jenkins have a lot of plugins, and through various plugins, it basically talks. So there are nothing but the interfaces through which it can talk to the tools, underlying tools. Then it can also help in continuous deployment, that as soon as my test pass and I make a decision of putting it on a server, I can use Ansible to do that. Right? I can also continuously monitor, and there are Nagios, there are Datadog. There's a lot of tools there in the market. It also helps in version control, and obviously it helps in building your product. Okay, so that's why Jenkins is into the picture. Right, keep posting your questions. I'll take them in the last. Okay. Now, I hope you have understood why Jenkins is in need and why do you want to use it. Now let's see what is a container, right? Because we want to understand why do we want to use Docker, why do you want to use Jenkins, right? So on the left hand side, sorry, on the right hand side, if you look at it, right, that was predominantly the architecture that was there, quite a long time, right? When I started my career, that was the architecture, right? Somewhere around close to 2015 or so, Docker predominantly was gaining the traction in the market. Uh, so the architecture was, for everything they will have VMs, and every VM will have its own OS, and the apps would run on those machines. There would be a hypervisor which will talk to the underlying infrastructure. Now, what is the issue in this particular architecture? The issue in this particular architecture is that it's very bulky. If you look at it, right, you need physical machines to basically do that, or you need a big server and you need to cut down those machines, right? Think about a scenario wherein you have a 16 gig machine and your only requirement is a 2 gig, right? You are wasting the memory there. Right? Why would you need a machine then? So what was the idea here is that the machine itself is quite bulky. It requires a lot of configurations before it actually plugs into the system. There was not much technology available around that time, which was actually can do this in a smart way. So Docker came into the picture and said that, okay, don't worry. Okay, I can use one machine, but give me one virtual machine or give me one machine, And what I can do is I can have an orchestration layer, and I will orchestrate all your apps. Okay. So if you look at the picture on the left hand side, you have apps A to F, which gets orchestrated by a Docker layer. So Docker would basically run these apps in a container. That's also an OS, but it's very, very tiny OS with a minimalistic. the- It will basically bring in those images, which is very minimal. Like for an example, if I do not want XYZ software on my machine, why should I install it, right? So Docker gives you that provision to basically customize the way you want to, and have it as light as possible. Now this light small container can run it on anywhere, like it can work on a machine, virtual machine, or AWS, and wherever it would be. So what it has done, it basically created a Docker layer, an orchestration layer that sits on a host OS. So I'll show you the demo. You will see that I have a Mac OS on which I have installed Docker. So my Mac OS is my host operating system, and then I have a Docker layer, which would in which I have installed the machines, right? So that's predominantly container. Like, to summarize in a layman term, a container is just like a small room in your home, right? And your room would have only basic stuff what you actually need. You will not keep all the things of your house in that room, right? You would distribute it similarly. So it's very, very lightweight, right? It's just just the whatever I just mentioned, right? A small room in a house. So you think containers like them, right? You have a home with 3 bedroom, right? Those 3 rooms are nothing but those 3 containers where you can do uh, you can do whatever you want to. Having said that, um, let's see how it works. Okay, I'll go a little. So sorry that I have to go a little faster because we have very, very limited time. So let me show you something. Okay, so what I've done, I have downloaded Jenkins war file. Okay, from the internet. So you can go to the Jenkins site and you can basically download the war file. Okay, so I hope you can see here. Um, so what I've done, I've created this command. Okay, see, yes. Okay, so here, if you look at it, I have started the war on port 5000. Okay, this will give me a website, Jenkins website on port 5000. So let's see how it's seen. So if I go here and I go on Jenkins, let me log in again. I can see that this is the board, okay, and I can see there are some jobs here. We'll talk about those jobs, what they do and how to need to create. I'm not showing you how to create a job, but if you at all want to create a job, you need to go to new item, and then you need to specifically select, what you want to do. Now they have a lot of options right now. When I started, it was only freestyle, a Maven project, and external jobs. There were only 3 options. So they have now multiple options here. So you can basically choose the type of the project and then go forward. So I'm not going through this right now. Okay. So you have Jenkins here, and I'll show you, when we do this. Now, what I've done in parallel, I have created a Selenium test. So everybody understands Selenium here, right? And I've created a pipeline test. This code is freely available. You guys can go to GitHub and can um, basically take it from pull it from my account. Okay, so here you will see a pipeline test, and you can basically take the code from here. So now what I've done is I have created a pipeline test, and this is nothing but a simple Google search test. So I have a page object which will hold the objects, and I have a test. Uh, Now, what I'll do is I'll run this test on grid, Selenium Grid, and hence I have initialized the WebDriver as a remote WebDriver. And the test remains the same, that it would basically open Google, go and put automation, then click on the search button, see how many links are present, and assert whether it is more than 130. Right, simple test, nothing fancy about it. You guys can also do this. Okay. Now, how would I run this? There are multiple ways to run this. One way to run this is I right click on my test and I say that, okay, run as test ng test. Or I can basically have a test ng XML file through which I can execute. I can create the file on the fly and I can execute it. The other way that I can do it is by using a Jenkins file. Okay, let me show you the Jenkins file first and then see what it does. Okay, so if you guys look at this, okay, and let me put this to the editor. Okay, let me see. I hope it is visible. So what I'm doing is, um, okay, I am not, most of the organizations and most of the people who speak with generally uh, go ahead and go to Jenkins and then have a single job, right? They will create it as a freestyle project. Okay, they will create it as a freestyle project or a Maven project. Okay, and then what they will do is they will basically configure this particular project. Now, when they will configure this, right, it would be a one single job. Okay, I hope you guys understand this. So now let's assume that I fill all of these configurations and I want to run this, right? So I go to the dashboard and if you see that this is a project, but it has only one job to do. That means whatever is the underlying configurations I have done, it would only do that. However, if you if you visualize, that's not how our software development pipeline works, right? Our pipeline is that uh, when I say pipeline, it's a series of steps. So first step is obviously writing the code and checking in. Second is building your code. Third is deployment. Fourth is initiate testing. Fifth is when you initiate testing, you need to prepare infrastructure. Sixth is generate reports, make decision to move the pipeline forward. If it works, take the build from the artifactory and then publish it. So if you look at it, there are series of steps that I have to do, right? And predominantly, most of the organization only create one project, one job because they are only concerned about testing, right? But as an automation person, we need to actually see the entire pipeline. What if, what if, as a tester, I have written test for API and UI, and I want to run them in parallel, right? Um, I hope you guys can imagine, right? The code has come and it got deployed. I have to initiate now the automation, and most of the companies would do that. They would run the tests sequentially, like they will run the API first, they will run the UI then, and henceforward. Think about the problem here. The problem here is since it runs sequentially, it would take more time. So what to reduce the time, what we do is we make it parallel. Now, how it is possible when you only have one project and one job? It is not possible, right? Um, to do this, you will most of the companies will do that. They will prepare one job for API, one job for UI. Okay, there is no linkage between them. Extremely difficult to basically do decision making on whether I should be able to certify the build or not, right? It's very difficult. So now how should I be proceeding, okay, with this? So let me show you how you can create your pipeline in parallel. So I was coming to this file. So what you will do, you will create a pipeline, right? It's a sequence of steps that I have to do. Uh, I define stages. The stages is pull the code. Now, when I say pull the code from where? So what are the steps? You pull the code from this GitHub. Okay. Second stage. What is the step? I need to basically do a Docker compose. I'll come back to this. Okay. That's where you would basically create your environment for your execution. Third, you build. What you do is you set your Java home, and then you basically do your Maven clean package. So what it will instantiate your tests. Fourth, what sorry, it will just it will package and build your code. Fourth, what it would do, it will run your test. Fifth, it will destroy what it has created, right? So if you look at it, these are series of steps. Okay. Now, if I want to basically if I want to basically want to run UI and API in a parallel way, what I can do is, and what I can do is that I can have the file created like this. Okay, let me show that to you. Okay, so let's see this. I have a pipeline. What are the stage? The first stage is build. I'm just echoing. Like I'm not doing anything. I'm just showing you how you can run them in parallel. Stage two, I want to instantiate test, but I want to instantiate test parallelly. I want to instantiate one job UI and another job API, third job security. I want to run parallel testing to my on my product. So what I have to do, I have to just um enclose this in a keyword called as parallel and mention all the stage. So what it does, it's a nested staging that we are doing, segregating with the help of a keyword called as parallel. Now I can define stage. It has got multiple stages. It has got a UI test one and a UI test two. So you will see that you will have multiple jobs running for that UI tests. So this is where I will be parallelizing my UI tests. I can also parallelize my API tests, right? And like that. And then the final stage is deploying. Now let me run this and show you how it looks. Okay. To make it more fancy, okay, we are using Blue Ocean plugin. Okay, so you can have Blue Ocean plugin to visualize it much better. So I go to test pipeline and I'm just doing building now. Okay, so when I go to open Blue Ocean plugin, what it would do, it would basically see. Okay, so it ran just now, right? So I'll show you how it runs and looks. Yeah, so it looks like this, right? So can you see? Right. So it started the build. There are two UI tests that I have to do. There is and I have to instantiate API test and security test and deploy. Okay. So I'm just running it again. So you will see that it will starts in parallel. So that's how you can parallelize your test by you creating a Jenkins file. Okay. Um, awesome. So now coming back to Jenkins. So that's fine. Okay. Now the idea here is that fine, you told us, that you can parallelize this and this is how you should do it by using Jenkins file. How would you basically create my environment? Okay. How would you create my environment? So what we do is think about a situation if I have to do all of this manually, right? I have to basically run each and every command in terminal each time and then monitor whether those are working fine or not. And I cannot keep it running because this is my personal machine. I cannot do that, right? So what generally we do here is that we use Docker because it can run in background, and we'll basically create the infrastructure, uh, the entire infrastructure on Docker, right? Now it is very difficult for me to memorize each and every command, right? You need not to memorize each command. Um, Second, you do not. I do not want to. I want to basically parallelize my my container creation also, right? All of that. Uh, and how can I achieve that? I can put everything in the Docker Compose file, right? Uh, so what I am doing here is that I can create multiple containers and I can tell them what they have to do. So what I've done is, um, how would I get this information? Simple. You can basically go to Selenium HQ. There is a Docker Selenium page, and you would see a lot of documentation here. So you need not to write these commands and memorize them, and it's very very difficult. So what you do is you basically use a Docker Compose. If you want to basically work with the previous versions, version 2, the latest is version 3. If you look at it, here is what they're doing is they are creating a Selenium hub, and this can be any name, right? This can be Soumya as well, right? But what it would do is it will bring in the image. So there are predefined image, and this image would have basics, right? We will have binaries of hub already there, okay, and probably few more files. In this particular image, you will have the binary for Node Chrome and Firefox thereafter, right? And we give the name we give container a name, and we basically externalize the port, okay. In We would definitely do follow-up sessions, more depth in Docker, Kubernetes, how to scale this up and all. But for now, just think that you already know that Selenium Grid works on 4444. Obviously, you can change it, but that's a standard port. So 4444, I'm externalizing it to 4444. And here, if you look at it for nodes, right? What I'm doing is I'm creating a hub, and then I'm creating a node and connecting to hub. What I'm saying is that, okay, do not start building the container, because unless this guy completes, so that depends on. And what is environment? Who is the host? Host is my Selenium hub, and the hub port is 4444. So like that, if you look at it, they've created Chrome, Firefox, Opera, and you can have more browsers here. Okay, I hope you understood. So now we will use this concept and create our Docker Compose files. So it's the same thing, and it this will basically connect to the hub. Now let me show you how it looks like. Okay, so not here. Okay, so now what I'll do is I will okay, right. So let me check how many Docker containers are running right now. This will give me okay, so there is none. So Docker PS is list down all the process. Okay, do I have images here? Yes, I have some few images here. So I am not uh, again pulling the image, because you can see it's as a GB of the image and it takes little time. Okay, and so what we have done is, we have pulled this, so we have images. Now what I've done, I've checked in this code to my GitHub. Okay, and I'll then now configure my Jenkins. Okay, now I already have a Jenkins file which will tell um, the Jenkins what the steps it has to do. It has to basically pull the code, run the Docker Compose, and Docker Compose will create my infrastructure, set the Java path, package the code, run the code, and destroy at the last. So there are various stages here, right? So I've checked in the code. Now what I'll do is we will basically go in, and in Jenkins we create a project. Okay, so we have a test webinar project. So let's click on it. When I click on it, let's go to configure. Okay, when I go to configure, you will see all of these are blank. These are of no use to us. Why? It's because it's not an individual job. We are instructing Jenkins that use our file, and whatever is in written in the file, do that job. Okay. So hence what I've done is, in the pipeline section, I can either write the pipeline script like I showed you earlier for the UI API test, or I can basically pull it from the Git, and I've given the project. When I'm giving the project, it sees which branch to pull, and which file to pull. So when I say Jenkins file, what it would do, it will pull the code and it will run this particular Jenkins file. In Jenkins file, what is written is what I've mentioned earlier as well, right? So now this is just the thing that you have to do, okay? And then just to save, okay? So once you do the save and you say build now, right? And go to open Blue Ocean, what you would see, a test has been triggered, and you would see that it has pulled the code. It is now spinning up the Docker images, and you can see the shell file here. So what it is trying to do, okay? And you would see that there are various stages that it is doing. So it has spun the Docker images. Now it is building my code, right? And you can see all the logs here, what it is doing and how it is doing and everything, right? So let's wait for this to complete. This will probably take a minute and a half. Yeah, it has already started the tests. So I can click on here and see what it is doing. So you can also see what is the command that it execute, and it's the same command which you have mentioned in our Jenkins file. Okay, so you would see here that it is trying to run the test, and it has found there is an initializing driver. You will see that it is opening the Google application, and I'm by the way executing in a headless mode. Obviously in Docker it has to run on headless mode. Now it has failed, right? So I'm not going into the nitty gritties. Yes, it is failed because of I have given more than 130 links, and it has just have 95 links, right? So what it has, since it has failed, it skipped the earlier pieces, right? Um, we let's see what let's see when it has passed. So when I click, when we see here, okay, there were 138 links. Okay, the assertment is true, and then it has destroyed all the containers running. Okay, so this is how you basically containerize your tests. And if you want to run them in parallel, I already showed you, how it basically looks like, and you can basically do the execution like this in a pipeline mode, right? This is extremely flexible. Now there may be a question that somewhere there is an image which is 1.1 GB, and because you are basically pulling the existing image, can I create on my own? Yes, you can. You need to have a Docker file. So mentioned, you can create a Docker file like I mentioned, a Jenkins file, and you can have not. This is not the format. It's a YAML file, and what you can do is you can basically instruct it that what image, base image you want to pull, what are the components that you want to install, and everything in it, right? So you can use your own stuff, and then you can push the image to the Docker registry and then pull the image in the Docker Compose file. Okay, so that's how you can basically do that. To install Docker on your machine, preferably if you have Linux and Mac, it would be very seamless. uh, you can go to Docker website, install it. You will see that there is a Docker process that is running. It runs in a demonized mode, um, and that's how you would basically do it. Now let us go back, okay, and let's see what's there in the grid console. I forgot to show you. So let me see there. So here it, so you can also see, what's going on in your grid. So if you understood right, we spun only two containers, one for grid, one for Chrome, right? And if you look at here, that you can see the configuration. Now, can you create multiple versions of Chrome? Yes, you can. You just have to go to um, your Docker file, Docker Compose file, and mention what version of Node Chrome that you would need. Okay, and those many versions you can actually spin up and execute your tests on. Okay. Um Apart from that, I already showed you how Firefox and Opera looks like, so you can have multiple browsers as well. Right. So coming back to Jenkins, I this is the same thing. Um, yeah. So here you will also can look at how much time it took to basically execute, and you would also see the individual logs if you want to. Right. So that's the beauty of the pipeline tests. Okay. Similarly, go to Blue Ocean plugin and see what has happened to this job, and this is how you would see it is running. Okay, so you can pull all of the information. You can get it up, you can get yourself up and running. However, you would need Jenkins, you would need Docker as a prerequisite, and you can use the pipeline test as is. I have modified this very very recently to this up to date. um, Jenkins, I already mentioned that there's a war file, so you can get up and running. Only thing that you have to remember is when you configure, when you create a project, you just need to create a pipeline test project, and you just need to mention certain values here, right? And you just need to give your Git repository. So fork my project, and then you can expand it as much as you can, um, and then mention that you need to run the Jenkins file. So this is as simple as that. Um, I hope I'm making myself clear. Uh, this is what is a demonstration. I can now take some questions, and we have some time to basically answer it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think there are some questions in the tab, and I'll just show them.
Sure.
So the first question we have from Mayur. He's asking creation of Jenkins files should be always in Selenium repository, or this configuration is possible to achieve through Jenkins itself.
See, Mayur, we are creating Jenkins file ourselves. Jenkins does not spit out this file, but Jenkins understands. So you just need a YAML file. Uh, it's actually not an YAML file. It's a format that Jenkins understand. So you create that file and then feed it into Jenkins. Okay. So Jenkins does not spit it out, but you can just create things on your own. Okay. And you can refer to my project and see how I've created it. If you have any questions, you can connect me on LinkedIn or anywhere.
Okay, I think that answers the question. We have another question from Rohit. Is it mandatory to run browser in headless mode inside Docker?
Yes. Um, See, Docker do not give you. Just give me a second.
Sure.
Sure. See, Docker do not have an interface. Okay, like we have a GUI interface. You can look into it. Docker does not have, because you Docker. What is the philosophy of Docker? Is stay lightweight. However, you can basically see what's going on in Docker. Okay, probably we can do a webinar on that as well. There are two things that you can do. One, you can basically do a VNC. I think you can understand what is VNC. Uh, uh, you can search about it. You can do a VNC on your Docker and see exactly what's going on. Right? So you can use that, or right, rather using Selenium Grid, you can use Selenium. Okay, it also gives you a VNC. It will also show you what's going on. Okay, the Selenium Grid. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Soumya. We have another question from Nagendra. He's asking, do we need VDIs to host Docker?
Do we need VDIs to host Docker? No. You just need a machine. It can be a VDI or it can be any machine. I have demonstrated you on my laptop. So uh, you can use any machine, Nagendra.
Okay. So next question we have from Nikhil. He's asking, hi Soumya, my question is, I have devs code in one repo and test code in another repo. Then also can we use this?
Yes, you can. You can, because you just need to give the path of the repo, right? As I showed you, I am calling the repo from my GitHub URL. Um, see, actually, if you look at it, you need to rephrase this question, because we do not have to worry about where the dev code is. Okay, because ultimately they will build the code and they would basically deploy it somewhere, and then we will trigger this, right? So generally it's a huge pipeline. It's just what I showed you is a very, very small subset. However, the best practice always says that keep your test code along with your dev code. Okay, because then it gets built uh, uh, together, and it saves time for building it separately.
Got it, got it. Thank you for that answer, Soumya. Um, we have another question from Nagendra again. He's asking, can we not deploy if the test fails?
Very good question, but it all depends upon how you want to do it. Okay, you can put uh, you can obviously nobody wants to deploy if your tests are failing. However, you can basically set the threshold. Okay, not here, but you need to put that intelligence in another job. Okay, that job would basically understand what are the results that has been populated. So what I can do, I can base whatever results I've got, I can ingest it into a DB, and the next job will fetch the things from the DB and say that, okay, if your pass percentage is say 99.2%, I am going to go ahead. Okay, I am not going to fail this particular job. Okay, so that's a call that you have to make. Okay, whether you would like to proceed, whether you do not want to like to proceed.
Okay, got it. I hope that answers your question, Nagendra. Next question we have from Pradnesh. He's asking, what's the best way to run automation on IE browser?
Sorry to say, Pradnesh, I do not automate on IE. It is the most unstable browser that I've ever seen. Okay, um, whatever works on Chrome or Safari or Firefox, it may or may not run on IE browser. Okay, um, I do not have, as far as I know, I do not have any binding or binary which can run on Docker. So you actually need a node on a physical machine, Nagendra. Sorry, Pratnesh. I'm sorry.
Okay, so next question we have is from Ayush.
Okay.
Ayush is asking where Jenkins file should be created in code under which folder.
It has to be in the parent folder, Ayush, all the time, because if you want to also put it in a folder, you can just give the path to um, path in the Jenkins configuration, where I've just written Jenkins file. But preferably all the configurations or integrations that you do with the other tools, it should be in the parent folder. Okay.
Okay, I think that answers your question, Ayush. Next question we have from Sajita. The question is, how do you manage number of container you spin up to run your test? Assume you have 100 tests.
There is nothing to manage, Sajita. The thing is that what you can do is it is a strategy that you have to work out with. Let's assume that you have 100 tests and you want to run it on two containers. You can do that, right? Once your test finishes, all the data gets ingested into your DB or any centralized place. You can eventually you have to destroy those containers. You do not want to keep them running, right? That's the beauty of Docker, right? It stays lightweight. You can just bring it down and bring it up as when and you want, right? With VM, we do not have that luxury because it would itself takes a lot of time to start. But Docker spins up really, really fast. So uh, there is no right or wrong answer here, but there is no absolutely you need not to do any management, I would say.
Got it.
Right.
I hope that answers your question, Sajita. Next question we have is from Karthik. He's saying, firstly, thanks for the insightful session. How can Kubernetes be used in this context and what is the value?
Okay. So Karthik, what you can do is Kubernetes would come when you want to scale this, right? What I showed you is just two containers, right? When you have to uh, when you have to run multiple containers, let's assume I want to run it on 50 different browsers, okay, and my infrastructure stay low. So what I can do, I can go to either browser stack like tool or lambda test like tool. But if I want to do it on my side uh, and scale it, I would use Kubernetes or I can use Docker scale. So there is another thing that you can use. Okay, so for scaling your tests, you would need Kubernetes.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for answering that, Soumya. Another question we have is from Habib. So Habib is asking, Selenium Grid automatically does the load distribution on parallel execution. How does Docker helps us when we already have parallelism with Selenium Grid?
I'm sorry, can you please come again? Selenium Grid automatically does the load distribution on parallel execution. How does Docker helps us when we already have? Okay, Habib, these are two different questions, I would say. Why are we using Selenium Grid? Selenium, okay, to execute, and to parallelize, you would use Selenium Grid, okay, for execution. But why Docker is important? Because those execution has to be done on some machine, right? So either you do it on a container or you do it on a VM. It's your choice, okay? But these are two separate things, right? Running things on Selenium Grid is purely your tests that are running on Selenium Grid, but those tests has to run somewhere, and that is why we use Docker.
Okay, got it. I hope that answers your question, Habib.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point here.
Yeah.
Think about this, right? Okay, Selenium Grid has given you an option to parallelize your UI tests. Okay, however, let's assume that you have API test and security test also. That means now you have to parallelize even your tests, which are of different nature, right? It's just not functional anymore. How do you do that then, right? Selenium Grid won't help you to do that, and hence you can then spin up an independent container along with those functional test containers and then achieve what you want to achieve.
Okay. Um, we have one last question, Soumya. It's again from Nagendru. He's asking, if we run Docker on local, the
Mhm.
machine may not be up all the time. Then I
Mhm.
need to choose VDI. If we have to choose VDI, then what is the point of Docker? I want to eliminate VDI totally.
Okay, let me read this again. It's a very, very long question. If we run Docker on local, the machine may not. Why it is not up and running? Let me show you something. Okay. Um, I think you may need to go and look into some of the basics of uh, some of the basics of Docker. Uh, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Okay, let me see this. Okay, so Docker ps hyphen a. Docker, yes. Can you see here? My containers are still running, right? They're up from 18 minutes. You actually do not worry about these tiny stuff because it will run in the background all the time. Okay. Uh, if you obviously do not shut down your system. Okay, that's obviously eliminate this thing. But if your machine is on, this can basically keep on running in a headless mode, and you need not to worry about anything. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah, Soumya, Nagendra is asking a follow-up question on this thing only. What if we shut down the laptop?
So why do you want to shut down the laptop if you want to continue your test, Nagendra? Right? You are running the VDI, right? Let's assume that you want to shut down your VDI. Your test will go off, right? Why do you want to do that? Right? Docker would not consume as much memory, power, battery as your VDI, right? They are just tiny little stuff which will run somewhere in a corner of your machine. So you can continue doing your work.
Okay. I think other questions we can answer in our Discord channel,
Okay.
right? So guys, so everyone, if you want to ask any other questions to Soumya, you can join our Discord channel, and I'm sure Soumya will answer those questions. Or you can reach out to him on his LinkedIn profile, and he will answer your questions. Thank you so much, Soumya, for this informative session. I'm sure I will be speaking everyone's mind when I'm saying that it was a really insightful session. It was a really knowledgeful session. So thank you for that. So thank you all of the team. Shout out to the team who helped organize this whole thing and who is running this whole thing. So that's it from my side. Thank you all, and see you soon in another event. Bye.
Thank you very much for hosting me, Vanshika, and thank you everyone for taking their time out today. Bye.